Hello again, and welcome to another video on the lore of Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt. Today we will discuss a character that we have never got to see in the game, but one no less important than the rest that did make it in. The Tremere known as Quilla. Quilla is an elder of Clan Tremere, Primogen for her clan in Prague, as well as the leader of the Prague Chantry and House Quilla, established after the fall of the Prime Chantry in Vienna. She is relatively solitary, only taking an interest in research and practice of blood sorcery, causing many outside her clan to find her unpleasant to be around. Despite this, she is a prominent member of the Camarilla court, holding the trust of many of its Primogen, even though they would rather not have to deal with her personally. Of those who speak of her in the Prague Elysium, only Custis seems hopeful of her return. He states that he has need of her services, likely referencing the Tremere's control over the medical district of the city and thus the production of blood bags. But the attacks by the entity, bagged blood has grown scarce, and this is Custis's preferred feeding method. Kirill and Maya both speak of her negatively and don't seem pleased at her imminent return, while Omnis plots to see her return as soon as possible to temper M's acquisition of power. Quilla takes a disinterested view in the nightly dealings of the kindred and kine. The entity attack means little to one who saw the original Inquisition firsthand and can conceal and ward their location from prying eyes. Instead, she works to solve the issue of the Second Inquisition as a whole, and has no desire to focus on one small part of it. To this end, she has little interest in aiding those outside of her house, no matter how interested they may be in her. Quilla's name was likely taken after her embrace, and her namesake is that of the Incan goddess known as Quilla, goddess of the moon, marriage, and the menstrual cycle. She was worshipped as this goddess after her embrace, before the fall of her people and her exodus to Europe. The pronunciation of her name likely shifting to its current form sometime after that. All that is known of Quilla's mortal life is that she lived somewhere in the Incan Empire before its fall, though her life was not meant to be a long one. Not long before her embrace, she had been chosen to be a human sacrifice to the Incan gods. The timely arrival of the Spanish conquistadors set her on a different path, as there were kindred among their number. It is unclear if the conquistadors interrupted the sacrifices before they began, or if she was found in the last moments of her life and embraced just in time, but she rose into unlife soon after. This would likely have occurred sometime between 1528, when the Spanish first arrived among the Incas, and 1532, when the Spanish began to conquer their lands. Wherever it fell, Quilla existed for a time as the living embodiment of the moon goddess Quilla, living in a temple and continued to do so for a time as the Incan Empire began to fall. As Quilla reached the limits of what she could learn of the magics of her homeland and from her sire, she chose to leave South America behind and go to Europe sometime in the late 14th century so she could continue to gain understanding of her newfound power. She joined fully with the rest of her clan, becoming a scholar and trying to avoid the politics inherent in kindred society, preferring her studies and the pursuit of knowledge. This single-minded focus and disinterest in the outside world may have helped her to avoid the worst of the burning times brought about by the original Inquisition. It is unclear how or when she found her way to Prague, but she managed to rise through the ranks of the Chantry there over time, despite her disinterest in anything outside of her pursuit of knowledge, or perhaps because of it when one considers the nature of the Tremere. A no-nonsense focus on the pursuit of the mysteries of blood sorcery likely appeals to many of the sorcerers in the clan, and over time many flocked to her side. When Vienna fell in 2008, Prague in particular felt the danger of being a relatively short distance from the city, and the Tremere of the city feared they could be next. This fear was soon realized as Second Inquisition forces learned of the existence of the Prague Chantry and sent a team to investigate. Luckily, the Chantry is well hidden, and very few know of its location or how to get into it even among the kindred. Quilla calmed the other members of the Chantry and tried waiting the Inquisitors out, but ultimately they came too close to the location of the Chantry for comfort. Not willing to leave anything to chance, Quilla exited alone, locking the building down, and sought out the soldiers armed with only her blood sorcery and a pair of scourge blades. The battle was incredibly brief, lasting only a minute and seeing the entire team decimated. Those not left in pieces were dragged alive into the Chantry, never to be seen again. This was likely the foundation that allowed Quilla to maintain power in the Chantry and establish her own house. House Quilla is one of many solitarchies that formed after the fall of the pyramid. The heads of many individual chantries, freed from the yoke of the pyramid and any blood bonds that ensured obedience to it, established their own houses as they looked toward a future full of uncertainty and change for the Tremere. Many Tremere flocked to Quilla as she maintained her interest in her studies of magic and sought to solve the problem of this new Inquisition. Quilla was not present for the Second Convention of Prague, and when all hell broke loose, she stayed where she was and sealed the chantry, not having any interest in participating in the Bloodhunt or the specifics of the entity. Why prune the branches of a deadly plant when you're already digging at its roots? In the confusion of the night after the attack, as survivors began to gather in Elysium, some wondered at the lack of any Tremere elders in attendance. Later on into the night, some of the Tremere's scholars began to arrive in the Elysium to lend their aid. It is not known if something outside their chantry has piqued the interest of Quilla, or those under her merely felt the desire to assist. Unfortunately, we never saw beyond this point of the story, but Sharkmob recently revealed through lead writer Martin Vikner that the ultimate idea was for Omnis setting in motion a plan to lure her to the Elysium to help shake things up as M continued to gain power. After Kirill was soundly put in his place and cut off from any real authority, Quilla remained the only elder of the court that could sway the balance away from M at that time and likely would have eventually shown up. What Omnis's plan may have been, and what it would have meant for M's burgeoning power, we do not know, and can only speculate on now. Regardless, seeing another powerful elder enter the Elysium could have had some interesting ramifications for the story, and Quilla had been shaping up to be an interesting character. Perhaps someday we can learn more.